Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast. Be sure to join our community. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished. Also, go to our site, preppedandpolished.com, for more information and to sign up for our 1-hour SAT Strategies course entitled SAT Strategy Secrets. You'll find it right on the front page of the website. I teach the course. It's fun and engaging, informative, and free. So check it out. And if you have a question or reaction during or after today's podcast, submit your question to radio@preppedandpolished.com. Someone will get back to you immediately. Today's guest is Elly Swartz. Elly is our first three-peat guest who has also appeared on podcast episode number 44, where she talks about the school application process, and episode number 72 on how to start, write, and revise the college admissions essay. Elly is an experienced writer and author of dozens of articles, and her book Finding Perfect will be coming out October 2016. She has over a decade of experience helping hundreds of students gain acceptance into America's best colleges, grad schools, and independent secondary schools. Elly received her bachelor's with honors from BU and JD with honors from Georgetown. Elly's company, the Essay Advisor, helps students with the school application process, particularly focusing on the application essay. On today's episode, Elly talks about how to overcome writer's block for college admissions essays. Hi, Elly. Thanks for coming back on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Alexis. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you back. So can you please remind the Prepped and Polished community about your company, the Essay Advisor, and how you help students navigate the college application process?
Sure. I help families navigate the application process, and I do everything from brainstorm to send. And really what that means is helping brainstorm, outline, edit the essay, help the students find their voice and tell their story. I can pitch in and help them organize their activities resume, stay on track with all the applications, and give tips to help them make the most of their college visits. And then obviously what they need to do once they hit send. And I individualize the process so that for each family it can look a little different depending on what your family's needs are.
That's awesome. So let's focus today on writer's block. You're an author, and I hear that authors get writer's block. So do you find it also happens with students trying to write the college essay?
That's a great question. Yes, I do. Really, anyone that writes can find themselves in a situation when they are staring at a blank screen, which is never pleasant. So in this case, with students, it does happen often. And I think one of the main reasons it happens is the college process feels so weighty and so important for them that sometimes it can be overwhelming and almost paralyzing. And they worry that nothing important has happened to them. They don't know what to say in their essay. They are focused on what they should write, and they kind of forget about just sharing their story and what really is important to them. And all those things combined can leave them feeling kind of paralyzed and just stuck. So it really can happen to whether it's students or authors, really anybody who's diving into something that they feel close to and that it feels important, that you can find yourself being the subject of writer's block.
Wow. Okay, so if you're a college-bound student, you have a bunch of essays to write, college application essays. And by the way, make sure to check out Elly's podcast episode number 72. We go a little bit more into depth about how students can start, write, and revise essays. But now, if you're a student writing a college application essay, you find yourself stuck with writer's block. How does a student get unstuck?
Okay, there are 5 tips I have to get unstuck.
Wow. Great.
And the first thing to remember is just don't panic. you will find your voice. But the first tip is to move. Relocate. Take your computer and change your venue. Get off your bed, ditch your room, move away from your go-to spot. And take your laptop and go to the kitchen, go to your little brother's room, go to the nearest Starbucks, wherever it is. But just shake things up a little bit. It can really, really help unlock the ideas. Just get out of your comfort zone. So that's tip one.
Nice.
So tip two is to exercise. I know it sounds funny, but there is nothing that gets the brain moving like exercise. You're stuck. You've been staring at the screen for the last 20 minutes. Go for a run. Walk around the block with your dog. Borrow your neighbor's dog if you need to. If exercise really isn't your thing, then, do some jumping jacks in your room or some push-ups. And if you're still not convinced and you hate moving in that way, open up your playlist, pick your 3 favorite songs, and dance around your room like crazy. Just get your heart rate up. And once you clear your head, your ideas are much more likely to start floating to the surface. So that's tip number 2.
Love it.
Are you an exercise guy, Alexis?
Well, I mean, I ran 3 Boston marathons, and I'm done now, but,
okay.
I run a little.
Right, so it can be helpful. So tip number 3 is back to basics. And so what this means is when I'm a writer and I'm blocked, I find it's because there's a lot of pressure on me to produce. I'm writing a book, and it's really important to me, and this is the climactic scene, and I feel the pressure, so I feel nervous. So what I often do is I scrap my computer, I embrace tradition, and I write the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. I literally move away from my writing area, from my workspace, and I write on paper. It feels less permanent, it feels less committal, it's not as pressure, there's not as much pressure in it, and I feel freer to just express myself. And if I hate it, I can just rip it up like it never happened. So you can give the pad a try. And if you're not the fan of pad and paper, just open up a new document, but don't call it college essay. Don't just write on the top of it thoughts. And it's sort of a no-pressure space for you to just let your ideas unravel in a way that feels non-committal. And I know it seems simple and how could that possibly work? But it really does. It really allows you to unstick. So that's tip number 3.
This is great.
So tip number 4 is talk it out. Sometimes if I have an idea or I'm writing a scene and I'm stuck or my students are stuck, what happens is you're so inside your own head that you are having a hard time expressing yourself. So phone a friend, talk to a parent, grab your older sister or brother, and talk it out. I mean, when I'm stuck, honestly, the best thing I can do is, and I've tried all the other tips, I call a friend or I talk to my husband and I let them know what I'm trying to say and just talk it out. And my friend or husband's questions and answers and input really enables me to look at my writing and look at what I want to say through a different lens. And a conversation like that really can unstick you from writer's block.
And just that's an awesome tip. But now, just to clarify, you don't want your grandfather to give you a bunch of ideas, right? Is it a little bit more of a one-way, just have them listen to you? Or is it okay to engage in a dialogue and get some input and this when you talk?
Well, I think both can work, that you can talk to somebody, they can be your sounding board, so that's sort of the one-way conversation.
Okay.
But dialogue is okay. That can really help you. It doesn't mean that you take your grandfather's suggestions. It doesn't mean you allow him to reroute you. Like, your story is still your own, and you should really hold on to what you want to share. But sometimes input from somebody can help you just say, oh, well, that's a good idea. Okay, I'm going to start it. I can now start writing. It can just help you unlock sort of some of the intensity. So the dialogue can work, but just stay true to yourself and to what it is that you want to share.
Awesome. Perfect.
And the last tip is to really disconnect. Shut down Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Snapchat, Twitter, Vines, emails, sports updates. Just close them all down. I mean, it can be incredibly, incredibly distracting. So once you shut down your social media, it just frees up brain space. And when you're done your writing, use your social media as your reward. All right, let me get this draft down. Let me get 9 lines down. Let me get a page down. And when I take my break, I'll open everything back up and I'll reconnect with the world. And that can be like your reward. You can space it. But I think when you're trying to write anything, having all these pings and notices flash across your screen, it's almost impossible to get anything down. And it can be really interruptive and incredibly distracting. So those are my 5 big tips to unblocking. Move, exercise, back to basics, talk it out, and disconnect.
Those are great. And I'm really glad that you brought up the social media piece, because it's a distractor. And in fact, you and I were chatting the other day about the detriments of social media when writing the college admissions essay. So I was wondering if you think this influx of social media is helpful or harmful to kids when they're stuck with writer's block, and how?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have been talking about it, and social media is a really, it's huge in kids' lives, in everyone's lives these days, and it can play a really positive role. But with regard to the essay, the 2 ways that I find it has a negative impact are, one, the way we just spoke about, which is it's incredibly distracting. It just is very invasive unless you turn it off while you're trying to do something. So that's the first way I feel like social media has a negative impact. And the second way is that kids are so used to getting this instantaneous feedback. They want to research something. They want to talk to somebody. You can do a search. You can send an instant message, and you get immediate feedback. So when these same students sit down to write, and it doesn't come to them right away, it becomes incredibly frustrating for them. They're not used to the process. They're used to very immediate gratification. I think a lot of that comes from social media and the way the world kind of interacts now. And again, it can have its place, but I think what it leads to is students getting very frustrated more easily when ideas or the words aren't coming to them as immediately or instantaneously as other information, as they can find other information. So I think Definitely. That's been negative.
So shut it down.
Shut it down. I mean, again, you can use it as your reward. You can absolutely jump back in, and when your work is done or when your draft is done, reconnect, and that can be sort of your, the carrot stick that your reward at the end, or your chocolate. But for now, I would just say limit it and just realize that if you are stuck, just try these tips. I mean, it's not just what I preach. I mean, this is what I use in my daily writing life, and they're helpful. So give them a try.
Perfect. And can you remind our audience how to get in touch with you?
Sure. I am on Facebook, The Essay Advisor. I am on Twitter, either at Elly Swartz or at The Essay Advisor. And my website is essayadvisor.com. And my students or people with questions are free to email me at theessayadvisor@gmail.com anytime with any questions.
Perfect. Elly, thanks for coming back on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Alexis. It's always great.
And this wraps up our show today with Elly Swartz. Make sure to go to Elly's website. It's www.essayadvisor.com, essayadviser.com, to learn more about the amazing work Elly does helping kids get into their schools of choice. And for more of Elly's words of wisdoms, make sure you rewind and go back to episode 44, where Elly talks about the college process as a whole, and number 72, how to start, write, and revise the essay. And make sure you check out preppedandpolished.com/podcast to access Elly's episode number 44 and 72 and all of our podcasts. And episode 97 will be our next episode. It'll be our tutoring tips episode, so stay tuned for that one. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.